Hey guys, welcome. I hope you're all doing great. We are back in the kitchen today and it is full-on soup season. We are in the heart of fall, we're coming up on winter. Winter is coming, and they are both perfect times of year to enjoy soups. The one I'm making today is actually one that is native to my husband's homeland, which is South Texas, and it is called Calabacita con Pollo, or as it's pronounced back where I'm from in my homeland of Northwest Louisiana, Calabacita con Pollo. Either way, it translates literally to squash or zucchini and chicken. That is the basis of this soup, though we're going to meet a lot of other really great vegetables that are going to round out the flavor of this really amazing, hearty Mexican soup. It is absolutely one of my favorites. When Mark showed me how to make it 10 years ago, I thought, wow, this is so great. He's doing something so nice for me, and he really was. But now I see that he was really just giving me the blueprint to make him this soup for the rest of his life. But I don't even mind. That's how good this soup is. So we're going to get into all of the ingredients here in just a moment. But first, go wash those hands and let's get started making calabacita con pollo. Okay, so let's meet our cast of characters for today's soup. Clearly, as from the title of it, Calabacita con Pollo, we have the chicken and we have the zucchini. Those are the base of this soup. From there, we're going to expand, and you can actually leave out some of these things if they're not quite to your taste. For example, the jalapeno or the cilantro, something like that. Totally fine. And you might want to add some things that you don't see in here. That's totally fine as well. Make it your own. I'm going to show you the way that we make it. There are different variations, but this is the variation that we like. So again, starting from the base, you've got your chicken. Now I've got 1.5 pounds of chicken breast that I have cut into 1-inch cubes. That is the way we like it. I've seen other versions of this recipe where they use chicken thighs. That's totally fine as well. To this, we are going to add 1 tablespoon of oil. I use extra virgin olive oil by default. You can use canola, vegetable, whatever works for you, as well as 1 teaspoon of fajita spice. Now, I've just bought the regular fajita spice from the grocery store. You could use whatever version you like. Montreal seasoning from McCormick is really good. Salt and pepper, whatever works for you. Just lightly season your chicken to give it a little bit of flavor, but you don't want to overpower the flavor of the soup, so just kind of play it easy with that. To that, we are going to add 1 onion cut into 8s, and I'll show you in a minute what I mean by that. We're gonna do 2 tomatoes. I've just got your regular greenhouse tomatoes, also cut into 8 wedges. I've got 1/4 cup of cilantro that I'm gonna chop. Actually, I'm probably gonna use a little bit less because we don't like the real strong flavor of cilantro, but that is what the recipe calls for. I've got 1 jalapeno that I'm going to chop, and then I've got 2 zucchini squashes that I'm going to cut into slices. Also, I've got my carrot. Now, if you're doing low carb or keto, you might want to leave the carrot out of your portion. I would still cook it in the recipe. It's not going to make that much of a difference, but for your portion, you might want to just go ahead and take that out. Now, in a little bit, I'm going to show you the actual bowling of the soup when I put it into the bowl, but it kind of depends on how you want to eat it. If you like to have your soup the traditional way, in this format, you could put beans, refried beans, borracho beans, charro beans, as well as rice on the bottom and then the soup on top. That's how Mark likes his, and he also eats it with corn tortillas. But for me, trying to go a little bit lower carb, I usually do just the soup. So again, however you want to enjoy it, totally up to you. I'm just going to show you the way that we make it. So these are all of our ingredients. This is all it's gonna take to make this soup delicious. And then of course, some water, but you know, who doesn't have that? I'm gonna go ahead and cut these up, get them prepped so it makes it a little bit easier and less dramatic for you to have to watch all of this, and I'll be right back. All right, so we're ready to get started. Now, this is where I feel like I'm selling something on QVC, because would you believe if I told you you've already seen the hardest part of doing this? It's actually true, but you haven't seen it. What I mean is that by the time you get to this point, you will have already cut up all your vegetables, and that's the toughest part to do. But in specific, let me show you what we're working with. We have our chicken. Again, this is the base. Now, what I'm gonna do with the chicken is add to it the onion. The onion, as I was telling you before, I have cut into 8s, and that's gonna put them into some wedges, right? Now, I've already poured my oil in, but I'm also going to put in my fajita spice. I'm gonna pour that in, and then I'm going to add my onions. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this over the the Dutch oven, which I have preheating over medium. So you want to get a heavy bottom stock pot or a Dutch oven and go ahead and put that over medium heat. And I'm just going to kind of mix this together a little bit. You can mix it more in the pot itself. The dog's going crazy. Dog's been quiet all day. The minute I start doing this, crazy. Then we're going to put this into our pot, and you can hear it's already sizzling and going. And I'm just going to mix this around. You're going to stir fry this, incorporating all of the elements, the fajita spice, the onion, the chicken, and the oil, and keep it moving for about 4 or 5 minutes. Keep it moving in the beginning anyway, and then it'll kind of do its own thing. You don't have to worry as much about it sticking to the bottom. This is where you're already going to start to fall in love with the soup, because this is when you start to smell it. And I know we've been talking about smell-o-vision since the 1960s. It's not here yet. But if you could smell this, oh, holy Lord, it is so good. So we're just going to mix this around like so. And again, this is over medium heat. So while that's going, let's look at a couple of our other ingredients. We've got the Calabacita, which I have cut into, I call them half moons, but they'd be basically semicircles. So we've got those 2. We have our cilantro that we're going to add at the end. Again, I'm using probably about a tablespoon and a half chopped today. Recipe calls for a 1/4 cup, but we're just not huge cilantro fans. So I've got my jalapeno that I have chopped like so. I've got my carrots that I first, scraped. We don't like the rustic carrots as much, so we do like to go ahead and scrape those, taking off the outer layer, and then I cut them just into little circles. All right, just mixing around. And then last but not least, we have our tomatoes. Now, Mark is a tomato snob. Before I met him, I never knew there was such a thing, but there is. People like their tomatoes a certain way. I always thought just Roma was fine pretty much for anything, but he really likes the greenhouse tomatoes. And I have to say, I kind of agree now, because those, by the time it's done, incorporate so well into this, and they're so juicy and so full of water that it adds to the flavor of the soup by the end, and I just don't get the same outcome when I use the Roma tomatoes. So I would say I'm on board with the greenhouse tomatoes. Mark wins again. Surprise, surprise. And I said last but not least, but actual last but not least, a cup of water. Something that you actually don't have to buy. So this is looking pretty good. This is about how I want it to be. I've been going for about 4 or 5 minutes on this now. So I'm just going to add everything else. And that's what I meant when I said that this is the easiest part, because you're actually just throwing everything in. And that's it. That's going to be the whole part of this soup until you start to just let it go on its own. That's going to be very chunky at first. Very, very chunky. Because so many of these vegetables, you'll not need to be told, are full of water. And we're only going to put a cup of water in, which is not going to look like nearly enough. But by the time all these vegetables have finished cooking down and releasing all of those great juices and flavors and waters and mixing all in, it's going to be amazing. So next I'm going to add my water, 1 cup. And we're going to mix this in like so. And again, I know if yours looks like a train wreck like this, you're doing it right. And then lastly, I'm going to sprinkle the cilantro over the top and give it a quick little mix as well. Now we are going to cover this and cook it over low for at least 20 minutes covered. At that point, we're going to check it, see how it's looking. I personally like to let this marinate and go for at least an hour, if not more. Soups are like that. Soups, certain ones, not so much because they could separate. But this type of soup, it's simple enough that the longer you let it go, the more flavor it's going to get. And I'll tell you something else too. The next day, when you heat this up, so much better. It is so much better the next day. So anyway, but this is what I've done so far. You've all seen me. I'm going to use my clean spoon now since the chicken's all cooked on the outside and I've eliminated the salmonella risk. There we go. All right, great. So that looks how it's supposed to look. I'm gonna take my lid, cover it, all done. Go relax, go read a book, go watch Netflix, whatever. Let this go on its own, turn it down to low. 20 minutes, we're gonna check back and see how it is looking. Okay guys, time for the big reveal. Now, for me, this is always the most stress-inducing moment because you realize that if this goes wrong, like you'll never know because the whole video will be erased, unlike a couple of the others where I've left it in to show you my mistakes. But this is pretty much an all or nothing kind of thing. If this didn't work out, I gotta start all over, but let's hope it worked out. So again, this has been going now for about an hour. 20 minutes is the minimum, I would say, and it really is gonna depend also on how you like your veggies. If you like them a little more solid, a little more crispy, you might not wanna let it go as long. But again, this is one of those things where the longer you let it go and the more you give the flavors a chance to incorporate, so good. But anyway, without further ado, let's see how it turned out. Oh yes, this is exactly how it should look. You'll notice that the vegetables have basically released, as I said earlier, their juices, the water inside to sort of blend. One thing I did not mention is salt and pepper. If you want to add that, go ahead. I did this on a very kind of base level today. So if you do want to add salt and pepper to your liking, of course, feel free, or your guests. I also mentioned earlier that Mark likes this, in his opinion, the authentic way, which is with rice and beans on the bottom. So I've done that here to show you how that looks. We've just got a little bit of refried beans on the bottom, a little bit of rice on top. And then you would just take your soup and ladle it over, making sure to get a little bit of all the ingredients and a lot of the juice that makes it so good. Now, I'm not going to try this. I'm gonna make sure we get some zucchini in there. So it should look just like this. And then plated for presentation, of course. The cilantro that serves no purpose other than to just look a little fancier. We have our tortillas on this side. And again, the rice and the beans, the tortillas, only if you're not worried about low carb. If you're doing low carb, 86 those, you'll be good to go with just the soup. Take out the carrots, all good. I'm not gonna try this right now. I like to give it a sample usually for two reasons. One, because it's really hot. And two, because there's a little bit of arsenic in it because I need Mark to stay home sick tomorrow from work so he can help me with the dogs. So, just kidding. I hope that you have liked this video. I hope that you found value in it. If you did, I would certainly appreciate a like. A subscribe will be even better. Just be sure to click the bell so that you know when we release new videos. And until then, you guys stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.